We're going to
I'm
start
so
right now.
glad.
We can start. You can start with her if you want, Dr. B. I'm Al
Yes, I will
McFarlane.
start.
Welcome to Conversations with Al McFarlane. Today is Friday, June 24th, 2020. And this is the Healing Circle. We do this every Friday in conjunction with the African American Child Wellness Institute. My co-host and leader in the initiative, Dr. Bravada, Garrett-Akinsanya. Dr. B, let me throw it right to you. We've got a big issue to deal with today. Lots of issues, lots of friends and people to talk about it. I'm going to pass the talking stick to you to introduce the program and the protocol.
Okay, thank you. First, thank you, Brother Al. As we celebrate our elders, thank you for this space and to give us space for voice. We acknowledge the land that we stand on, we work on, we lived on, belong to the Lakota people, the indigenous people who loved and supported this land. We also realize that we celebrate our elders because they're the shoulders we stand on. We celebrate them and our ancestors because our ancestors are closest to the Creator. And in that celebration, we recognize that we sit in a center and not in a hierarchy because the center allows access to power. Everyone in the in the circle, is allowed to meet in the center where there is power. So, in an orderly way, an African way, in the tradition, we use a talking stick to talk to each other. It's virtual, but if we were in a circle together, we would be acknowledging and supporting each other at this moment. So I first began by talking about the topic of today, and the topic is a reversal of freedoms, mental side, and the 4 white property rights. And we're going to talk about what that means, white male property rights. And we're going to talk about what this verdict has meant to us as a group of women and as a community. And before we get into that, I really want to just start out by honoring my dear sisters who are here at this panel. And I first want to start with my colleague and dear friend and a wonderful psychologist from Texas running for the president of the American Psychological Association. She would be the second Latino in history to win this role. So I really want to give her a shout out. Dr. Cynthia de la Fuentes, I would like to pass the talking stick to you first, because I know she's got a hit and run, but we sure are glad to see her. And asking the question about introducing yourself and why this important verdict impacts what you think is important for women and people of color. Now you got the stick.
Thank you very much, Bravada. And I appreciate you welcoming me into this circle, this healing circle. I needed to come in because I'm just all up in my feelings about the SCOTUS decision, and I live in Texas, and you know, where Texas is already trying to criminalize access to reproductive rights. And I truly believe that this is a violence, a judicial violence against oppressed, traumatized, indigenous, BIPOC people, pregnant people and their families. And I think it's clearly to me a white supremacist agenda against those of us who are already located at the intersection of bigotry and social and economic and political powerlessness. And I needed to come into a circle of people who would hold this grief with me and rage with me. And now I'm just going to listen because this is what I need to do right now. So thank you very much. I pass the talking stick back. Thank you.
Thank you, sister, so much. Thank you. And now I'd like to introduce a couple of other sisters at the table. Especially wanting to introduce Dr. Sonia Davila-Williams at the table. Sister has been here before. She brings it every time she shows up, but I want to have her talk about it as a woman, and is it Caribbean American, African descent sister, gonna talk to us about what this verdict means to her. Sister Sonia, I'm passing the talking stick to you, my queen.
And without words, even though we all knew it was coming, and we were kind of prepared in some way for it, we was hoping it wasn't going to happen. So, and without words for what is happening, for what it means to the poor and disenfranchised women of color, or what does it mean for them to access to services, to access to medical and health services, because this is only the beginning of taking away rights and taking away or services that will impact and will improve the health care of women of color. I pass the stick back to you, Bravada.
Thank you, sister. And now I'd like to pass it to our educator and longstanding pioneer and warrior woman, Sister Brenda Lyle Gray. Here you go, sister. I'm passing the stick to you.
Thank you, and good to see you, Dr. Bravada. I'm like Sonia. I'm just speechless, but I expected it. And once you watch the hearings and know where the mindset is, it's not a surprise.
No.
And we talked about it yesterday on the Legal Thursday show. And we know that it was a senator from Texas, and he said when they passed the resolution at the Republican National Conference or whatever, and they said that Biden was not a legitimate president, you kind of knew that this mindset was in the fabric. And it's what the guy said. I can't think of his name, but he said, you have to accept what is, but you got to beat them. You have to fight and you have to beat them. I don't know how we can beat this. This was coming. So I'm going to pass it back to Al or Dr. Bravada. Sonia, I'm like you. There's just not too much you can say. And I think as an educator, I think of the young teen girls. I think of the ones in foster care. I think of the Latino kids at the border who are being raped. What can we say? I just, I've had my tears for a whole lot of things, because when I read Al's article about the Black woman who was she and her mother, and how their lives had changed, and to see her just not even knowing what, she doesn't even want to use her name. How do we lose our name? That means that you lose your identity.
Mm-hmm.
So they've just taken another portion of our identity, our reproduction. For me, it's long over, but for the young people, I have one daughter that might give me a grandchild. But if that's not the case, that's not the case. But at least there was a choice. There's no choice anymore. The choice has been taken away from us. So it hurts. I'm going to pass it to my warrior friend, who I'm so happy to see, Cheryl Lynn.
Hello, everybody. I'm glad to see you guys too. And I too was expecting this terrible outcome. And I have to tell you, I'm very upset about it. I don't know. We got the devil in the Supreme Court. We no longer have any law in the land, constitutional law. We have people in the Supreme Court who have an agenda, and the agenda is not to serve the people of this country. It's not for the well-being of the people of this country. It's a selfish agenda, which they claim is constituted by their belief in God, but nobody's stupid enough to believe that. Because when you believe and love God, you love everyone. When you believe and love God, you realize that God is pro-choice. Because the Bible says, choose you today who you will serve, life or death, blessings or curses. So God gave you the choice, and for us to work out our own salvation with fear and trembling, not to judge others and try to force them into a corner to do our will, but the free will that they're going to have to see at the end when they face the Creator. I'm sickened by this, and if that group, if the Republicans, if the Supreme Court think they're doing something to increase Christianity, I got news for them. They need to read these polls. They need to read the research. People are fleeing the Christian religion in droves. And as crazy as we think the Muslim religion, it's growing. But also non-believers. That group is growing farther than any other group, because the reason why, we've shown them through our actions, our behavior, our hateful speech, that those who claim to believe are really non-believers. They do not operate under the grace and love of a creator that's loving. They are liars. They lie repeatedly, and they have no conscience. So I'm going to turn that back over.
You muted, Shirley, and I know you were saying something. But before you turn it back over, I wanted to talk about not just what you know, but who you are. And I want the audience to recognize that you're an extremely well-trained public health physician, what do you call it? Nurse practitioner, psychiatric nurse practitioner, who's worked in emergency, in the hardest conditions. But more than anything, you've always been an advocate for women's health. And I want people to know who's sitting there telling us their opinion, because you're not anybody to snuff at. They need to know your voice is authoritative, not just personally, but professionally. So I wanted to make sure I jumped in. I don't care who we get to stick to now, but I surely wanted to let people know who you are. And if they don't know, they need to ask somebody. So, brother,
she was passing it to you. She was passing it to you, Dr. B.
So I had created a small PowerPoint that I wanted to share with the group. And I guess, Al, I'm going to try to share it. I don't know if I know what I'm doing yet, but let's see.
I've got it up.
Oh, you did get it. Okay, great. You know, I can't see it because I'm too young to see that. But let me see if I can pull up mine and we can go at the same time. So I'm not interfering with the audience seeing it, am I?
No, I'll take mine down because maybe you can control yours.
No, leave yours up because I don't know how to share. So
okay,
you share. It's nice for you to share. Okay, so the what I call this is a reversal of freedoms, mental side and the 4 white property rights. And it really focuses on looking at who is making all these decisions about our lives. As far as I can see, only 3 people on that Supreme Court justice or who are justices have uterus. So none of them, the rest of them should actually not have to say anything. But if that was the case, it'd still be 2-1. Because what we know is that a lot of women think and link biblical or Bible or Christianity to abortion. But these are not biblical scholars, because if they were, they would realize there is no passage in the Bible about killing babies. There's no passage in the Bible about abortion. And if you push them a little bit just to go find one, they can't. So let's move on down here to the second slide I got. And that is the axe forgets what the tree remembers. Now, people who haven't had to deal with abortion or consequences of unwanted pregnancies, of rape, incest, horrible victims of war and torture who end up getting pregnant, even in our jailhouses today. If they didn't understand that, then they won't understand that the axe, the one creating harm, forgets what we all remember in our bodies. We remember it in our spirits, in our souls. We are the trees, and we remember, although the axe might forget. So this is not just our bodies as women, but our racialized bodies, our Black and brown bodies. We remember. And so there's a rule. This Harvard professor, Dr. Harris, came up with these 4 white property rights. And in that discussion, incorporated the idea of the dominant culture, not just white folks, but we extend this in our thoughts to what it means for men telling women that we are possessions. Harris argues that because of their racial and cultural otherness, Native Americans and Blacks are unable to assert rights in our land. We were unable to assert rights in our very selves. In selecting for white, middle class, and male experience and culture, the identification system and program select against difference. For example, the exclusion of non-whites from gifted and talented programs and services, maintaining access to educational opportunities for white students at other people's expense. And today's court ruling, I believe, is another example of the right to exclude us from being able to control our bodies. The second, the right to maintain rights of disposition. So this right of disposition is basically the right to make decisions to dispose of or use or confer property on others. So they get to decide whether we own our uteruses or not. They get to decide whether there's disproportionate identification of Black children and children of color and juvenile justice, foster care, out-of-home placement, special ed. They get to decide who gets in those systems. The third right is the right to status and reputation that is conferred on you because you own property. The power of sitting in a space that you get to decide who lives, who dies, who gets to have ownership of their body, who gets the right to vote. The idea of property includes expectations that certain kind of actions, privileges, and rights will be upheld and enforced by society, white society. Thus, one's status has a long-term ramification, like this decision of force-feeding America with justices who were put on against the way that we normally do it. They were put on unfairly, not following the regular stream. There were unprecedented ways that justices have been elected. One's status has a long-term ramification. One's social designation may be used to enforce a trajectory toward the continuation of practices that promote biases and discrimination. The well track or the jail track. And in my home state of Texas, now if you want to get an abortion and somebody helps you, you're on a jail track. They don't see it as women's health. We would put us on the well track. So women would not be in back alleys getting butchered any longer and dying on tables or days after abortions. The way they build prisons based on third grade reading levels of our Black boys and not screening or serving people for mental health or illnesses. Finally, we get to the idea of the fourth white property right. And this is the right to maintain use or enjoyment. Returning to those original white property rights, Harris points out that white males profited from the labor of slaves and the use of land that was not theirs. And a disproportionate number of people of color face limited access to education, vocation, economics, physical and social cultural opportunities. And these limitations are mandated by law and paid for by our very dollars. So now, by law, I'm a Black woman and I'm supposed to pay the salaries of people who say that I can't use my uterus as our shoes? Come on now. Come on now. We're talking about that in the context of mental side, which is the systemic effort to undermine and destroy a person's values and beliefs. And by use of prolonged interrogation or drugs or torture, induce radically different ideas that don't allow us to be human. We are less than human to them. And they see us, one big human being, white body privileged human being, male, seeing different human beings as other than human. We are property. In an effort on behalf of human beings to become something other than we were divinely expected to be in order to protect ourselves. That's where I want to stop right now when we talk about mental side and what this means for us, what this verdict means for us. So for us as women, what about next? Is going to be Black folks? Because can they just turn a law and say, okay, we're going to take away your rights from being Black anymore? And if you're Black, you're going to be slaves because that was your divine destiny, like manifest destiny. Is it supposed to be? No, we're not going to even have reservations anymore because this land belongs to us because we're white male and we're the ones who did water and electricity. What are they going to say? This is where I want to stop today with because my heart beats, but I'm telling you, it beats with fierce action. We gotta do something. And like we said before, oh no, they didn't. Not on my watch. And with that, I stop. I pass the torch back to my brother, Al.
Let me pass it over to Dr. Williams. Dr. Williams, I'm sharing this to our social media platforms while we're speaking, but this is an important topic. And Dr. B, thank you for that analysis and structuring the conversation. But I'm going to pass the talking stick over to Dr. Oliver.
Yeah, thanks for sharing it with me. Although I feel a little less competent to have the conversation compared to the women that are on the panel. The thing I think about as this discussion has come up was a play that I saw when I was, in the late 70s for colored girls who considered suicide when the rainbow was enough. That's speaking specifically to it. And the thing that gets me is the fact that it's not only the fact that there's a challenge to the unborn, but the people who are recommending the overturning of it don't care about the born, and and are not trying to shape things to be able to make it happen. Now, I remember as a young man that there were not only African American women that got abortions, but there were white Republican women that got abortions too, and that their fathers would take them to states where they could get the proper attention and health response to be able to get the abortions. So it's not a question of whether there's some considerations in terms of the well-being of poor women and women of color, but if you're whoever you are, if you've got the resources to be able to get it, you can get it. And that duplicity and looking at issues is a question I have, because it's not about being fair. It's about being trying to figure out who you're going to exclude, and also that you're not going to end up providing the same support to people who approach this issue from a different point of view. So those are things that I think about. And, knowing the history of Roe versus Wade and the challenges in terms of how people got to a space of looking at how do you address this issue is the thing that I can keep considering, and it needs to be fair for everyone. So with that, I pass the talk. The thing that I can keep considering, and it needs to be fair for everyone.
Looks like we're getting a little feedback.
Yeah, let me fix
it's
that. It's happening on my end. Hold on a second.
Okay.
Yeah, I pass the talking stick back to you, Brother Al.
He may be doing some technical stuff. Let's see if he's able to step up. Let me go ahead and keep the conversation going. More than anything, I want to say thank you, Brother Oliver, for always stepping up in those spaces when you use your power as not just as a man, but as a Black man, supporting women of color toward the trajectory of health. This is not something new for you. You've been doing this your whole life. And you truly are an ally. And I am blessed to have you and your beautiful, brilliant, awesome wife doing what y'all do every day. And that's keeping the world, making it right. So I would like to talk for a minute about what we think our allies can do in this moment. And what we can do, we'll talk about that as well. But I think let's just start out, since you've opened that door, of thinking of how our allies like you can help us move this forward, this conversation forward. So I don't know if you want to start with yourself, Brother Oliver, or if we can start with Sister Sonia. Sonia, you want to start?
Yeah, I think that as first we have to figure out who are our allies. We sometimes don't know that, and we need to figure out them and to identify them, and then we need to let them know in those places that like Texas and Alabama, I think it was one that what are their resources? What can we do for them? How can we help them in such aspects as helping women that needs to not just have abortion but have health care, because everybody's focusing in the abortion part, and that's a big part of it. But the other part that people are not focusing is what it takes for the health woman's reproductive system, because they're coming after that too, according to what I hear on TV today from Clarence Thomas. And what does that mean for poor women and women of color? And how could we help them and providing services for them that they're not able to get in whichever state they are? Identifying those states that they can get the help. I think this would be one of the first steps at this present times. And then we had to move. Oh, we cannot just say and accept that. The people that were against abortion, they didn't stop when Roe versus Wade was passed. They fought for almost 50 years to overturn. And so we need to know that it's going to be a long fight, but we cannot stop here.
Very good. Thank you. So Brother Oliver, as a man and as a Black man, what do you think we can do to get other men to be allies for us?
I keep thinking about the consequences of people who have witnessed the experiences. I know that there was a period of time when women ended up having any number of children, and that sometimes that one of the consequences is the fact that they were, expected to deliver those babies. And so when we had an economy that was sort of an economy where, like my mother's side of the family, my mother and my grandma had 15 children. And then on my dad's side of the family, they had 11 children. And that's what they grew up with, because they were sharecroppers and they lived on farms in South Carolina. And then as time passed, then you had fewer and fewer children. I mean, Sonia and I have, even though we wanted more, we were blessed with one child, and my sister with one child, and my other sister with two. But there was a period of time where you didn't have so much the choices, but you also needed the bodies to be able to help with the farming. And the world has changed, and and people don't choose that in the same way anymore. You know, they trap, and there's some people who are choosing not to have, kids, as well. And so I think that the one issue about choice is the big thing that we need to consider, but also about well-being and healthcare. And there are some people, particularly these days, where the healthcare system isn't as friendly it wasn't friendly in the past. It isn't friendly, especially now, in terms of the well-being of women and their choices of what to do. And it is interesting to me, and it hasn't been lost on me, that people who are making the decisions about this are men, largely. And I struggle with that. Is what voice do I have to be able to tell a woman what to do with her body? And I just think that it's not my place as much. And and to me, I think that there are men who support women's well-being and women's right to choose. And I think that there are some people who are empathetic to the challenges that women face. And I guess if there was a space for men to show up and then directed to know how they can be helpful in this process, I think that's an important thing. So with that, I pass the talking stick back.
So what I'm hearing you say is something that I haven't seen much. That doesn't mean it doesn't exist, but I haven't seen much evidence of when they have when they're picketing or protesting. I haven't seen too much that said men for reproductive rights. So, and that probably isn't, because I have seen men at the protest, but I haven't seen it organized in that manner where it says men for reproductive rights. Because guess what? If they want us not to have abortions, but that control over our bearing, like Sonia said, is not limited to that. Soon they're going to be saying no birth control pills. And then I wonder what that's going to look like. So all of this is related to just having control and who it mostly impacts. So with that, I'm wondering, Brother Al, do you want the talking stick back for a minute?
Sure, I do. Thank you. Well, thank you. I'll take that. And this is a rich, important, timely conversation. Dr. B and Oliver, Sonia, Brenda, I'm trying to approach this from a different direction. And the direction is, what is the equity, the proper, the proactive, positive role that men should have as human beings? And that positive, proactive role, in my sense right now, is a role that is not inconsistent, but that is in fact totally consistent with the dignity, the humanity, and the choice and the power of human beings. Every human being empowered to be her best self, his best self. And if we establish that as a base standard, it allows us to respect choices all of us can make, should make, need to make, and support each other in the choices we make. And so then there's no contradiction, and then there's also no hesitation in my affirming my support for every human being who is making decisions to effect and to move toward her or his own self-realization. And it moves us all away from the feeling, the need that we have to control somebody else. Yes. That rather than control people, we should be always thinking of how we enable somebody else. How do you enable a person to be her or his best self? What role do you play in supporting that person's idea of who they are and who they are becoming and what they can and should become? And I think that if we figure out that our best role, our best work is in recognizing that divine nature in each of us and speaking to that, calling that forth in a way that is genuine and that again recognizes and celebrates, acknowledges, and values the authentic desire of every human being to manage her body, his body, her circumstance, his circumstance. Then we're all on the same page. And then we're moving towards a place of balance, of understanding that all of us are in this together, that none of us is out of this, that we all have a role to play. We all are stakeholders in this. And we also can move towards this idea of how we use the question, the notion of justice to undergird our commitment to balance and sharing. So that's where I come from. As I look at where we are right now, this devastating, monumental decision, I don't look at it, though, with anger or with hope. I look at it with a sense of opportunity. It means we've ratcheted up the need and the playing field to engage more people, more clearly, more urgently, and that people that were on the sidelines who thought this issue didn't affect them will now see differently. People who thought maybe in a passive way that it wasn't their fight will see, yes, it is your fight. We all have to fight to guarantee the rights of women and the rights of every human being in our society and in the world. And there's no way that you can disconnect this regressive move from the spirit of regression across the country. It means the spirit of regression about continuing to try to disenfranchise Black voters, right? To do gerrymandering, to disallow our votes, our ballots, to normalize, as Brenda said, the treatment of Sister Moss and her mother when the president went on social media along with his lynch or henchman, Rudy Giuliani, attempting to demonize the sister because she was doing her job as a citizen, trying to protect and enact the democracy, keeping people in a position to exercise their vote consistent with the franchise of our democracy. And so, you know, the hearings in DC are pulling the cover off of the duplicity, off of the inequity, off of the core drive, the evil insidiousness of people like Donald Trump and those who call themselves the Christian right. That is being debunked and exposed for what it is. And so as it is exposed, it means that the rest of us have to redouble our work to ensure that we create open, honest engagement conversation that leads to all of our people going to the polls in November. And we have to make sure that we really understand that that is the battleground, the vote, the legislature, and the ability to represent all of us and to move our nation and to move the world forward. That's what I believe. So I'm gonna, I see my brother Yeli is here. I'm gonna pass the talking stick to brother Yeli-Akinsanya. Brother Yeli, here's the talking stick.
Good afternoon, everybody. And I'm truly happy to be here, but I'm truly sad of the event of the day. And I woke up this morning, then read that decision. Frankly speaking, I got to tell you, I went back to sleep because I was so sad. I didn't know what to do. I didn't know how to react. And I told Dr. B, I said, why am I so sad? And she said to me, she said, Yeli, you know why you're sad? It's because of the event at the Supreme Court. I said, yeah, I know that. I said, but why am I so sad about it? Imagine if I have a child, a daughter, who for whatever reason, I don't want to even think about rape or abuse or any man impregnating my daughter, then she needed an abortion. Then some man who has no role whatsoever in determining how her body or how she should feel with her body is making a decision on how she can access abortion, to me, America is truly a conflict of itself. You know, we preach freedom. Freedom from what? Freedom of what? When you cannot even guarantee freedom to more than 50-something% of your population, they don't have the right to decide what happens to their own body. And you have 6 men at the Supreme Court making decisions of how women should take care of their body. That's a conflict of the existence of the United States as a country. But you know, I'm actually more, the Democrats are frankly speaking, they're very weak. They don't know how to fight. They've been dealing with thugs and hooligans who have, from the day this decision was made 50 years ago, that they were bent on changing it. And the Democrats keep playing with them like, oh, they're not going to do, they're not going to. Democrats, as somebody said about 2 weeks ago, and I forgot who said it, said the Republicans are thugs and Democrats are just too weak to fight. When people tell you what they're going to do and you keep playing with them like they're not serious, and they keep showing you evidence day upon day, day after day, that they're serious and are putting every element of their evil machinations in place, and you still don't believe them. We've been expecting this for a while. Now it's happened. Now what is going to happen? You know, as much as I hope and pray that women, men who have common sense, who have wives, who have children, daughters, who have sisters and brothers, as long as we all gather together and we form a front to defeat all these thugs all over the place who talk about rights, but they don't even know how to grant it to their own daughters, to their own wives, we are in big trouble. So this is a fight to finish. In November, we all need to gather together and vote every single one of the people who do not entrust women to make their own decisions. We need to vote them out, period. If you want to talk about right, talk about the individual right. When you have more than 51% of women in the country, then women should be making decisions that overshadows anything that anybody wants to talk about in the society. We have a plurality of women. Women should be in positions of making those decisions. And you see, where there are women, there's less war, there's less conflict, there's less infighting. Let them make decisions that is better for them, and let us, you know, even how do people get pregnant? Let's talk about that. It's men that participate in making these women pregnant. Then you abuse them in the first place and you tell them then you don't have the right to make a decision on your own, relative to your own body. That's wrong. It's inhuman. It's evil. And all these Christians all over the place, whether they are white, black, or pink, or yellow, trying to find religiosity in this decision. There's nothing in the Bible that talks about religion or anything that has to do with religion. There's nothing in the Bible that talks about that. So I want to see all these Christian people talking about religion and how religion guides their principle or their decisions, telling women what to do and not what to do. And I'm kind of skeptical though, when we have plurality of women in the country, how did they end up not voting for Hillary and voted this evil man in place? The damage that Donald Trump has done to this country is going to take us decades to correct it. I rest my case for now.
Thank you, Brother Yelly. Who do you pass the talking stick to?
So mad.
Who are you passing?
Let me take it from him, because I know where he's coming from, and I just want to say thank you to my husband for being on fire with me about this situation. It's nice to have someone who supports you, got your back when you're this angry, and he's actually probably one of the most powerful feminist males that I know. He believes in women having rights and being empowered and supported. And I just want to say thank you once again. I'd like to pass the talking stick to Sister Shirley. She's gotten one round and I want to give her another.
I said,
the topic so,
hold on.
So there you go. There you go.
Bring your camera down a little bit.
Yeah, I've got my little portable. Try not to have it fall off the table.
I got you.
Yes, Yelly, we are mad. We are angry. And I understand what this is. I think we all do. What are those bigots saying out in the street? Those horrible, violent racists? They shall not replace us. It's about white women having more children. They really don't care if we have abortions or not, okay? They hope we do. But the only way to stop the white women is just to abolish it totally. So that's really their aim, because when these children are born, they don't make any arrangements to take care of any of these children. They only care about them in the womb, so to speak. But once they're born, they wash their hands of it. In fact, it's the northern states who do most of the taking care of these children after they're born by providing benefits to their parents and opportunities. Yes, I'm very angry, but you can't outsmart yourself. We say we've got a democracy. I got to tell you, the Republicans are fast destroying it. We've got more and more of us who simply don't believe there is a democracy anymore. And we can thank Donald Trump and the GOP for that. But we could also thank the GOP, who started before Donald Trump ever got in. When you have an elected body that has made a decision as a group to not support their president, the president of these United States, and to try to prevent anything that would benefit the citizens of this country, we've got a problem. And that problem has been going on and on and on. And we, as a populace, this whole country, I don't even want to say we're asleep at the wheel. The ignorance and the bigotry and the racism are so thick that it prevents us from saving ourselves as not just a human race, but as a country. We continue to allow the rich to come in and rape this country, take everything they want, destroy the environment, just destroy everything, and to leave us decimated as they go. They can live anywhere. They can do anything. They can have abortions day and night. In fact, they fly in the best doctor to do that. But I think this is just the tip of the iceberg of taking away BIPOC people's rights. It's really, all of this is aimed at us and at prevention of white women aborting babies because they want that population to increase. I'm going to pass the talking back to Dr. B.
Thank you, sister. I would like to pass it to Sister Brenda and then back to Sonia. And I have a very brief little video I want to show in the end, and we'll wrap up after that. So, Sister Brenda, you want to put a couple of 2 cents in, or a nickel?
I'll put a nickel in. I think this is backlash. And I think they are so humiliated behind the truth that has come out with the hearings. It's too coincidental to me. I saw it coming, but I think that the hearings, like Al said, they've taken the blanket off and they're showing their stripes. Angela Rose Myers said this. She said, it's hard to wake up a man who pretends to be asleep. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And I have to think about that. So that's my end. Mm-hmm. I get a lot of wisdom from those young ones. So anyway, I'll pass it back to Dr. B or Sonia.
And there you go. Thank you.
Okay. I was just talking with Oliver that I thought it was interesting the day that they choose to come with the decision, even though it really was done a long time ago. Exactly the day after we have here the most damaging evidence against Donald Trump and the Republican Party, the day after that, they decide to come with the decisions of overturn Roe with. That is not consequent. That's not a, they planned this. I mean, the Republicans called the justice and say, like, you need to come with this right now because we need to take the attention away from what is happening to us. And I just do not believe that it's a consequence. As consequences?
Accident.
Accident.
It's no accident.
It's not an accident that this has happened today. They just did it today because the evidence was so damaging yesterday
by other Republicans.
Yeah. Yeah. So it's very politically motivated. Thank you so much, sister. So, Brother Al, can you help me share my screen?
I think just go hit your share button at the bottom there.
Dr.
Okay.
B, what was Harris's first name on your study? Harris. What was the first name?
Yeah, it's C. I think it's Carla Harris. I think it's Carla, but it could have been Carlin. So it's a C. So I can't remember what exactly it is.
Thank you.
Thank you. And so I'm going to show this slide, and hopefully, just notice my thing said its battery's low. So I'm going to see if the slide will go. So let's see. I'm going to try to share now. And maybe Elliott can help me find.
When you hit the share button, it'll give you a choice of either Chrome or window, or maybe, and you can just choose where that shows up. You'll see that icon for the slideshow. Are you locked there, Dr. B? Because I think
she's frozen now.
Yeah, I think so too. Yeah.
Can you see me now?
Yeah, I see you now. Go to share.
Okay.
Go to share, Bravada.
Okay, there we go. Now if it's on the screen, let me see. There we go. Share my screen. I hope will the sound come out when I do that?
There's a place you have to say share the sound too. If you got can you drop it into the chat on the maybe I can share it.
I don't know if I can do that. Let me try. Let me just see. It says, I just hit the wrong thing. No. Okay, share screen. Let's see if it works.
And
it
then,
may not.
Then there's also a button that says use audio.
Yeah, I see it now. Yeah, I see it now. Thank you. That's quite helpful. Okay, now I can say share screen. And let me see, share the screen. Now the screen's not sharing. No, I can't do it. I see it says share audio. I see the screen.
Click that.
But I can't. Do you see this one of Jane Elliott? Do you see this?
No, we don't see it yet.
Okay.
There should be a button that says share now at the bottom. After you select the one that you want to share, at the bottom it should say share now.
Okay, the bottom should say share now.
I think.
Well, mine doesn't, and I don't know how to send. I can't send it to you. It's too big. So I can't. I don't see that. It's not giving me all those those things. So I'll stop right there. Oh, okay. Wait a minute.
You could also try to drag the file over into the chat.
Okay, let me try that. Okay.
And I can open it up, and that's the chat that says private chat. Drop it over there. And I could probably open it up.
Let's keep talking, and if I can do it, that'll be fine. If not, I'll leave a link. We can put it on the internet.
Well, I was hoping today's program would include two other people. One, my photographer, Roy
Lewis.
Roy Lewis is in DC, and he's actually on the campus of the Supreme Court taking pictures. I had hoped that he'd be able to respond to the link and come on and tell us what's going on live there. And then the other person that I talked to was a gentleman that we'll meet in the future. His name is Jesus Chucho Garcia, and he's a diplomat. He created an organization called Fundacion Afroamerica y Diaspora Africana. He's an intellectual who is a writer and activist and works on behalf of people of African descent. See, someone is trying to call me on Messenger right now. And that's David Grant. And hold on, go ahead and talk, Dr. Beek. I'm going to try to answer this.
Okay. Okay, so I think one of the piece that I was trying to share that I couldn't get a hold of is a white educator. Her name is Jane Elliott. I don't know if y'all remember her, but she did the brown eye blue eye study. And there's one point that she made on one of her video clips where she was talking about what is really going on. She talked about the idea that white men are focusing on Planned Parenthood because they're traumatized from having a Black president. And that Black president made them realize they were going to be losing power. So they started to implement, which they've been doing for years. They sped up their implementation of strategies to maintain power, because really what they want is to preserve white babies. And they she talked about their need to pay women to have babies. And if they had women who were going to have babies, then what they could do is pay them. But they said they had to pay Black women too and women of color. So that wasn't going to work. Then they said, well, maybe we can allow more immigrants into the country. And they said, well, the majority of the immigrants are people of color. And that won't work because we still will have that overwhelm. And he says, well, the only other way is to stop people from having babies in general. And that way the white population will continue to grow, and they know that the rest of the babies won't thrive. Because right now, a large proportion of Black women who get pregnant and go to have babies, they die in childbirth. So they can count on us because of disparities in health to die off. It's a shame what we're looking at. So, Brother Al, do you want to comment, or Sister Charlene? I got to talking to
I want to comment. I think they've been saved by the Ukrainian war. I think there's going to be a huge influx of Ukrainians. And the sad part is what I learned watching the news, when the Africans who were over there, by the way, who paid to go to school over there, when they wouldn't let them leave the country, even after waiting a week to board the train, that spoke volumes to me about the racism that is in Ukraine. And then here we're going to bring more racists. I think they're here already, some and more coming here, to have that entitlement that because I am white, I deserve the best. And because you are not white, you're not as human as I am. I don't need to respect you as a human being. Right now. But guess what? Right. What they fail to realize is these new young women, white, Black, and all of them, they don't want to be a mama of 10, 15 kids. Some of them don't want to be a mama of one. They got other plans for their life. They want to have fun. When what's her name came out with Girls Just Want to Have Fun, she wasn't lying, because they are not trying to have all these babies. So if you're counting on them to repopulate the white ethnic groups, not happening.
That's right.
So
that's right.
Do what you want. You can't make it be. They're the global minority, by the way.
Yeah.
Isn't that
Brother
really
Al,
scary, the deepness of their strategies?
Okay.
Though? They go real deep in trying to figure this out. They have a blueprint.
They've always had blueprints, and the Democrats never had any blueprint. That's what gets me. Yeah, they never have any blueprint.
It's scary to see how they think.
Yeah.
See.
So what that means to me,
until the hearings, and
Yeah,
then they
yeah,
got stopped.
and then they got scared because we
Yeah.
are organizing better, and now they need to put us on lockdown. But what I think happened with that verdict, if we are properly motivated, we'll use the defense mechanism that I talk about on this show all the time, sublimation. When you have sublimation as your defense mechanism, that anger propels you into greatness. That anger propels you into doing something constructive. That's many of us who have our agencies that are created out of our justified anger. And that justified anger of disparities and injustice socially, that's what motivates us. So it's time for us to use that anger and do something with it. And in the end, we better show up and vote before they fix it where we can't even do that.
To say, at the voting box, that's where the difference is going to come.
Yeah.
Let me see if I can share this video now. Hold on. Is that the right one, Dr. B?
Oh, I love her. I love her.
Okay, let me start it.
And right now, white people are really frightened. If you don't understand the destruction of Planned Parenthood offices, and you don't understand the wall that we're going to build on the southern border of the United States, you haven't read the book, The Birth Dearth by Ben Wattenberg. Ben Wattenberg was a brilliant Jewish man who was a member of the American Enterprise Institute. And he wrote a book, the first paragraph of which says, the main problem confronting the United States today is there aren't enough white babies being born in this country. He was an advisor to presidents of the United States. He wrote the book in 1987. He says if we don't change this and change it rapidly, white people will lose their numerical majority in this country, and this will no longer be a white man's land. Now, I'm not misrepresenting this. I'm telling you almost exactly what he says. He says there are three things we can do to solve this. Number one, we could pay women to have babies, as they have been doing in Western European nations for years. Then he says, and these are his words, not mine, unfortunately, we would have to pay women of all colors to have babies, so we don't want to do that. He says the second thing we could do is increase the number of legal immigrants that are allowed into this country every year. Then once again, he says, unfortunately, the vast majority of those going to come to this country today are people of color, so we don't want to do that. The third thing he says, and women had better pay attention to this, 60% of the fetuses that are aborted every year are white. If we could keep that 60% alive, that would solve our birth dearth. Does that sound like racism to you?
Can you talk a little bit about the trauma associated with
the trauma associated with it? Yeah. One of the main traumas is it tells white people that they are superior because of the lack of melanin in their skin. And then they find out suddenly that we've got a black president. That's traumatic. That's where the trauma is. Living a lie, finding out the truth is traumatic. Finding out now recently that within 30 years, white people will be in the numerical minority in this country is going to be traumatic. White people are scared to death right now, particularly white males. They're scared to death that they are going to lose their power in the future. And they are. But if you want to get ready for the future, if you want to be treated well in the future, treat others well in the present. What we do in the present constructs the future. We called the Japanese, and you'll pardon me, but this is what we call them, slant-eyed little yellow. We didn't say that about the Germans. After the war, we rebuilt Germany and Japan, and we get along beautifully with the Japanese. That was in 1945 that we finally won that war. How many years ago was that? Figure that out quickly.
I'm not a math person, but
you're not a math person, but you know it wasn't that far. Right. And it didn't take 50 years for us to have peace with the Japanese and the Germans, even though we dropped 2 atomic bombs on Japan. The Japanese hadn't killed 10 million people. Nowhere near that. We didn't drop any bombs on Germany, any atomic bombs on Germany. They were a different kind of people. We couldn't afford to do that. We killed how many Japanese people with 2 atomic bombs? And they forgave us. You want to talk about forgiveness? You want to talk about changing this thing? I cannot understand how Japanese people can stand the sight of any of us, and yet they do. I cannot understand why black people who have been subjected to the ugliness that they've been subjected to in this country can get up every morning and go to work among us and not be absolutely furious. And I don't understand why we allow white people to behave the way they do. I don't understand that. And my third graders, after they'd gone through the exercise, couldn't understand it and wouldn't tolerate it. And when they went up to junior high and a junior high teacher used the N-word, one of my former students said, if you're going to use that word, I'm going to go out in the hall until you stop using it, because we don't use that word in this school. That was a seventh grader who told his teacher off. When we have enough students who are willing to confront people who are making racist, sexist, ageist, homophobic statements, we're going to be better off. We have got to stop tolerating the intolerable. If it's intolerable for my black cousins, and every black person on this earth is one of my cousins, if it's intolerable for them, it's intolerable for me. I will not tolerate it. I will not tolerate it. That is not that. I am required not to tolerate that kind of treatment for the people who are related to me. And that's every person on the face of the earth. If your ignorance is such that you mistreat somebody because of your ignorance about the color of their skin, don't do it around me. Number one, I've been threatened with death lots of times. Now I say, go for it, fool. My husband died 4 years ago. Being with him would not be a bad thing for me. Death is not the worst thing that can happen to you. Living a worthless, useless life is much worse than dying.
Whoa, man. Well, what a statement.
A worthless, useless life.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't get the end of it. That's okay. I'll go
It's
back.
much worse than dying.
Got you. Thank you.
Welcome.
That was powerful.
She's even more powerful than that. I've looked at many of her videos. She also tells the fact, not the story, the fact that in Africa, over 5,000 years ago, Africans were doing eye surgery with instruments.
Mm-hmm.
Instruments.
Yeah.
She's frightening to the white ethnicities. Frightening, because she tells the truth, and they're running from the truth.
And I appreciate the truth today, because I wouldn't have thought or looked at this. I saw the surface, but I didn't get deep enough. So it's there. But I knew about the backlash. That's what I felt from when I heard the decision. They were angry about what has happened in DC. But
Well, it's time for our own backlash.
I know.
Yeah.
I know. And Al asked that at the end of almost every show. Now what?
What are we going to do? And I'm going to ask it again now. Thanks, Brenda, for queuing it up. And here's what I do know, that there's nobody on this program, in this panel, that is a defeatist and who is a surrenderer. That everyone here is a person that is both the embodiment of and the representative of the spirit of overcoming, of resilience, and of victory. That everyone here believes that victory is both inevitable and imminent, and that what we have done prepares us for the work that we are doing and going to do. And so with that, I ask each of us to make a statement in closing about the next steps. And we are not focused on the anger alone, though we are angry, and the anger is a righteous anger, it's an appropriate anger. But the question is, what are we going to do about it? How do we continue to move towards freedom and justice in our community and in our time? So with that, I'm going to pass the talking stick back to Yelly first, and then back to Sherlyn, back to Brenda, back to Sonia and Oliver, and Dr. B, I'll have you close it up, if that's okay with all of you. So Yelly, passing the talking stick to you. What do we do?
Thank you, brother. Quickly, what we need to do is organize. Not just organizing, we need to organize and get people to vote. It really got me. Somebody said this last week. How can in Uvalde, where you have over 185 or 820 something thousand Hispanics, and you allow a Caucasian, only 21,000 people voted out of 851. That's apathy. So if we can get off our, if we can raise the level or eliminate the level of apathy that we have in our community and make sure that we register and help people to vote in November, people who are going to vote for women's right, individual right, voting right, that's what we need to do. I'll hand it over to my sister, Charlene.
Yelly, I totally agree. And when I was down in South Carolina a few weeks ago, somebody in the shop said, "Oh, it doesn't matter who you vote for. Nothing's going to change." I said, "You got that right, because nobody gets out and vote." So if you got hypocrites and people who hate your guts, who keep getting in because everybody says it won't matter, then you're right, nothing changes. And so next time when you don't have goods and services you need, or you're being mistreated, ask yourself, if had I voted myself and others, these people would not be in. The people who disrespect me, who hate my guts, and who are constantly trying to take away everything that will make my life worth living. So yes, we have got to fight, we have got to vote, and we've got to wake up the sleeping lion within ourselves and our community to let them know we still be enslaved if somebody didn't start to rebel and to run and to just escape the whole circumstance. My hero is Ida B. Wells. That woman, as well as Harriet Tubman, those women were fighters. And we've got to instill that in the young people and try to get the older people and those right up under us to understand it's time to fight. It's time to fight. It's overdue. Yes. To
Brenda.
Brenda, yes.
I'll make this quick. I think we need to hit the college campuses. I think that's a core where our voters are, and they need to understand what's at stake for their future. So we're talking about high school juniors and seniors, and on the college campuses where we have to tell them this is serious, because they're not watching. The majority of them are not watching the hearings or anything, but that's just a tip of the iceberg. What happened last week with the hearings, what happened today. I think we really need to concentrate on trying to get them to see the seriousness of what's going on in our country. So I'll pass it to Sonia and Dr. Williams.
Well, one of the things that I believe is it is important for us to figure out not only how to organize, but I think it's also what action steps should we take? So it's organizing, but trying to figure out how we need to move differently than we are or have been. So what's the action steps that we need to take, older people as well as younger people? And I think it's important to go to college campuses, but realize you got a lot of problems with students in terms of how they see the world on college campuses. So it's not every student that goes to college that has an open mind. So it's trying to figure out how you engage them and how you direct them. But I think organizing and taking action steps is the way that we need to go.
Yeah, I think also that we need to find out who are our Christians allies. I know we have some churches that are allies, so how do we use them to get the message across to? So that's something that we need to do, and just don't let it die, not just because we have a short memory span here in the United States, and a month from today, nobody's going to remember, or very few people will remember. We just to keep the issue alive in order to keep moving on.
And yes, I would like to wrap up. Unfortunately, I hope you can hear me, but this is all I got to say. Ain't gonna let nobody turn me around, turn me around, turn me around. Ain't gonna let nobody turn me around. I'm gonna keep on walking. I'm gonna keep on topping, marching on up to freedom land. That's all I got to say.
Drop the mic. That's all that needs to be said. No stopping now. Can't stop us. Listen, thank you all. We'll see you next week. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.